Yeah,
All right.
sure.
Okay. So wanted to just get your 2 cents. I know you've done an overview video. A lot of people were saying they'd already watched the overview video, so they've seen it. Most of it was your interpretation of this range and what's happening, and I watched it, thumbed through a lot of it, but I watched it, and the main thing here was this backup that you're saying is probably an LPS and needs to be addressed, I suppose, because if it is an LPS, then you're expecting more explosive moves maybe next week. Is that correct?
I think it should probably do another spike up next week. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's like it's building its own new range, right? And uh, if you look at just the volume analysis,
Yeah.
there's no way that they used all that volume to push it up to where it's at, at the very top, and then decided to sell it, like start selling off at the bottom.
Yeah, because the volume's kind of picking up now that we're
It
coming
wouldn't
into
make
the
any
bottom.
sense.
Yeah.
They would keep it at the top to sell it off.
Yeah,
They
good deal.
wouldn't.
So what Stockfather is saying, and I'm gonna doodle it really quick, is that typically during distributive phases, you want to sell high. So all this volume that we see pouring in, a lot of it was from this 5 hit. There was a huge buy in there, um, but a lot of it is concentrated right in this spot, and it then results in there's a volume hike on the whole, but you're seeing the remainder of the volume's kind of low down here. And Stockfather's saying if you're going to sell off, you typically would want to keep it high in the range. So then, what exactly is this move about, Stockfather? What is your opinion on it?
Well, the when I was reading the LPS out loud to everybody on my thing,
Mm-hmm.
it says that it typically goes up, to the top of the trade range, and then it comes back down and dips into the, close to the top of the range, and then it basically starts making more and more kind of rag moves up. I think of it a lot as, do you remember when AMC had its first true distribution and it went down to the point where it could have been a shakeout with redistribution?
Yeah, are you talking about March? Or are you talking about when it was going down from December of 2021?
What At one point it dropped to 20 from like the 40s overnight,
Yeah.
and then it ran back up. That
Yeah.
that that piece. Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember that?
Yeah.
So that was a case of ascending accumulation, and usually that's what the LPSs look like, is some type of ascending accumulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this LPS will be more dramatic because it's got more ground to cover. So if you look at the bottom, it's an ascending accumulation without a spring.
Here, right? And yeah, this is the one that we were talking about. We were waiting for it, and we were waiting to see if it was going to try to do the spring. It just never happened. Um, it kind
I
of
think that
tried
would be
overnight,
considered like
but so where does this break down for you? Like, when does this turn into something bearish?
uh, if it goes past the middle of the bottom LPS.
Okay. So the middle of the bottom LPS, I have it at like roughly at like 430. Is that the same area that you have it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I wouldn't consider it bearish. I would just say, okay, somehow I was wrong. This is that little up before it goes into a spring, and then it's going to be that'll they won't hold a spring for more than a day or two. So
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think it really changes much.
So you're saying if you think if it drops beneath that 430, it's probably just going to go ahead and go for the spring, which is beneath 375.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was with people anyways. We've been talking about it, and anybody that said that they thought it was going down really 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 low, I was like, "No, I think the resulting action here would just be that spring to finally go get it." I'll say this, if you take away after hours or extended hours price action, there's not enough of a move here for the spring action. And I was talking about this earlier because anytime they've done this, and anytime and every time they've done this, unless this is like a halfway point on a much larger move, which could possibly get you down really low, this entire S curve, which is typically like a 50-50 move, doesn't exceed 423, which is the bottom. It's really interesting to me because it's right where that last support was before it took off. So the current and this is kind of booksy stuff, right? When I've looked at these S curves, is they typically go about 50-50, and then if they're gonna make another leg down, they have to chop for a while. And we just saw one not that long ago, and you can see this is what I mean. And you look back at May 4th through May 31st, and the 50% marker was where those hooks happened, and it's that perfect 50-50 S curve. And in order to make like a larger S curve, you have to kind of chop for a while and essentially establish another 50% marker, which it did. And that was when we came back up and we made a more dramatic hook on that upward creek, or that upward trend, as you want to call it, on June 13th. And then you can see that's like a 50-50 of a much larger move. This is going really fast. So we don't have to wait very long before we get the first 50% here. Again, unless you use extended hours, it's pretty straightforward. It's either
Right.
really close. It's like 455 or 446, something like that, or it's right around that 430. And so at least for me, I think this initial move, this initial S curve move is pretty much about to be over. So the resulting action is either going to be what you're saying, which I think is really positive and good, which is that you get another major move up, or it's going to be sort of a chop before a larger drop, in which case it would probably be a spring. And if that were the
Well,
case, I would be looking at it probably rejecting at 490. I'm just telling people what I'm thinking right now, maybe somewhere around there, and then drop down to that 370 region. Where do you see it needing to come back up before you're like, all right, it's in a good spot to continue? We're talking about downside, but let's talk
well,
about upside.
you've got your bottom pretty good marked out, but you don't have like the other LPS kind of marked. So
Mm-hmm.
so the LPS stands for what? Last point of support.
Right.
So if you look at the bottom, you have the bottom really marked out well, where the bottom tests the last points of support,
Mm-hmm.
where the support was before, and then if this thing is going up, right, and then it comes back down to test the last point of support, and the volume doesn't go crazy, so that means like nobody's selling, everybody's holding, then it's testing that last point of support, which is over to your left of the lower support, right? So
Right.
if you look at the overall, uh, if you look at just the bottom of it,
Right.
then you should see like where is it getting support at? Is it testing the support where the last point was before we fell down into the bottom? Because the bottom tested the strength test and the selling climax support. So what last point of support is this
Is
testing?
this going towards? Okay, that's a good question. I feel like it's a quiz. Hold on. I want to answer the question. So you're saying this little guy, the one that we just had from, let's say, June 27th through July 24th. I can't believe that was like a month. That doesn't seem right. I can't believe that. Yeah, but that's I guess what it was. It was a really long time, wasn't it? That was testing the bottom. So what is this one testing? I guess it's testing the top of the bottom area. I mean, I don't know what else it would be testing.
No, it would be the other support lines where it's come down and not went as far down. Do you
Yeah.
see like the bottoms? Yeah.
You mean like
So
right
it's testing
here?
those bottoms.
You like around the 450s?
Yeah, basically where it's at.
Yeah. Okay, that makes it simple. So when we come back
I mean,
up,
that's what I mean.
yeah, when we come
Yeah.
back up, what would you be looking for numerically? Like, if it pushes back to the upside, you want it to come back above 50%. What's your thought on this new little range that's being created for this LPS?
Typically, the LPS looks like an upwards moving M, and it does do that drop at the end,
Mm-hmm.
like the move did on the 30, where it's they at least all the LPSs that are going up I've seen do like the last oh it's almost like your schematic that you use a lot, but
Yeah.
uh, but the last move is a short move down,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it catches right. It looks like it's going to be distributive.
Right.
Like if you
Right
think about
here.
it being like cat ears, you would see a
Mm-hmm.
couple of them kind of start to pop up, and then when it drops, it'll catch the same day and then turn around and
Right. Like this right
shoot up
here
for a.
happened. This was really fast, but it lost the
Yeah.
support on the M, and then the way I usually talk about it is a sine wave that's coming back and doing like a final check, because it usually does that where it crosses over some kind of a creek resistance and then pushes up, but that it looks like it's losing before that happens. Like on July 20th, it looked like it lost the trend support. And then you're right, within that same day, it basically came right back up. Um,
And this is one of the hardest areas to identify. So like to be wrong on it wouldn't be the end of the world because I mean even the Wyckoff people call out that calling out an LPS instead of a spring is really hard because
hmm
you don't have that confirmation that it broke the trading range and came back in, right?
Right.
But what you also get is shorts being confused and not getting out of the play when they should have.
So you do see that kind of bear trap model. And that was another thing I was like thinking about was if it goes too low, you let out the shorts that were in down here who were thinking it was going to drop for that final move, or who were thinking it was going to distribute. But right now they're doing
But
the same
if
thing,
you
right?
were assured and it was coming down, you probably wouldn't get out because you'd think
Yeah. You think it's going to
it's coming my
continue.
way.
So right now, what would be an effective short trap would be getting everybody that got in pretty much here down. So I would say above 5 or below 512 would be a really effective short trap, because
Uh, I had somebody look at Ortex and they said that the time for the shorts to escape is up to 10 days now.
yeah. Okay.
That's
That's a
insane.
really high cost. Yeah, that's a really high days to cover, right? So really high. Is that what you're talking about? Days to cover?
Like, know that it would take them all the shorts started exiting now, it'd take an
Oh,
estimated 10 days for them to get out.
geesh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
When
that's
it ran to whatever the big move, whenever that was, I wasn't part of the play then. It was only 2 days at that point.
wow. Yeah. Um, here's
So there's
some.
a lot of short strap.
Yeah, that's a lot. Here's some hype for you. So you said, hey, did you check out Clearly Thinking's PNF? And I was like, nah. And then I went and looked at it, and I was like, oh, okay. So this is blowing up if it blows up. And we had talked about 19 to 21 for a long, long time, because of that upper supply, and used to be the all-time high area, and then that's where we distributed from. And there's just so many reasons why, even if you were going to redistribute up there or do like an upthrust or something, you would ultimately come way back up anyways. But the PNF kept bloating up, loading up, bloating up. It got really bloated a lot of times. And I remember it getting really bloated back in August before that move. And we had a PNF at that time, if I recall, of like 39 or something ridiculous. Like it was going to go up to 39 perhaps. And I had a target of 39 to 41. It never got there. So it ended up going up to like 24, 25. I think it hit 27 at one point. But it really like consolidated around 24. And then we redistributed. So having a really high PNF is great. But I suppose that even if it didn't get there, that 19 to 21 still looks pretty safe as a good estimate. Is that what you're thinking? Because his recent PNF is really high.
Yeah, it's because I added a row of zeros in, which I mentioned that in my thing. I was like, coming down to this level where it's at right now, without going any lower, added a new row of zeros, which you typically see on a way moving out.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what he was showing, is what I also mentioned in the video, was once it comes up with a row of X's, it becomes a triple top. And then one move higher, which also breaks our creek, on a P. So like Wyckoff would say, okay, it's starting to go up to change a character for sure. And then on the point and figure would also have its own analysis saying, yeah, this is a very strong, powerful move that usually sends a stock flying, right?
Right. So I've got it pulled up. It might take a minute for viewers, but I've got it pulled up. And that triple top we're talking about is at $6 because that's where it came up twice. It made a slightly higher high at $6 this time, but it was basically the same price, like that 620 area. So I've got it pulled up. That's the triple top. He's got it marked off with yellow. Is that correct?
Yeah, it should. Yeah,
Right.
we're not seeing it yet though. I don't think.
Oh, okay. Well, it's slow. It'll pop up. Relative Decibel asks, does an LPS also create a FOMO period? Yeah, it does. But it does a lot of things. I mean, there's so many different things that happen in every single move. Stockfather was talking about trapping more shorts, and I think that's a really good point, is that there's going to be people that are trying to stop the advance of the stock, and an LPS is a failed attempt to stock the advance of the stock. I mean, that's basically a way to describe it, is that it's advancing and then the sellers start selling and then there's sell-off ensues, but it fails to reverse the stock. And while that's happening, you typically get that FOMO in the beginning, right? And if sellers or shorts, as you would say, misread it, they think that it's an opportunity for them to sell into weak hands. And there's a variety of things happening. I mean, I don't really want to say that you're wrong. You're not wrong. But I would say FOMO is a difficult one because I think personally the biggest places of FOMO are like after smart money's already bought in. And that would typically be right after the SOS. Because then everybody knows that it's running and retail starts buying like crazy, and they don't have to work as hard to move the stock up at that point, and then they can start selling when they're ready because everybody thinks it's just going to keep running forever. Is that right, Stockfather?
Yeah, and in this pattern, there's usually smart money has three different places where they get in. The bottom LPS, that's where I got in. The current LPS, which even in the thing I read says this is another opportunity to get back in if you can identify it. And then, of course, the SOS being the last, getting close to the last move is a good buy-in.
Yeah.
So that's where smart money usually gets in.
Yeah.
It's easier to identify once and prices go up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like right now, the calls that I bought cost me a penny a piece at the bottom, and yesterday they cost me 12 cents a piece
Right.
at this bottom. So it's already times 12. You can imagine like what it would be like when it hits 10, the volume thing's going to increase, the implied volatility is going to go through the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
Relative Decibel said, so you want the LPS to create a FOMO period to move to an SOS. Yeah, I mean, every LPS is its own range. So within the LPS, you're going to have like a breakout period. So you'll have that move. Sometimes, like with AMC, there wasn't a strong, I mean, there was an LPS at the very end and then it just gapped up overnight. There wasn't really an opportunity to buy in if you missed it. But yeah, I mean, every one of them will create a FOMO period that gets you to the SOS. I mean, sure, I don't see why not. That because again, each one is its own range. So this is the point and figure. I'm pulling it up now. I've got the other one on there, which is the triple top breakout at 6. We've had that marked off, that yellow line on my chart, but the new measure that he got for this is $25 to $30, and that's really high. The reason I think that's really high is because if you think about Ape, and you think about the creation of Ape, and you think about the next steps to getting there and how we would have to navigate to get to that point way up high, it seems so far off, like that wouldn't happen. Now, when he's doing PNF, he's just using AMC, right? So he's looking at the AMC chart by itself. He's not looking at the combination chart, correct? I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, he's using the stock charts and just doing his own.
Okay.
He's doing it from. He bought we sat together in the other Discord, the one you're in, that we made together. Me and him sat in the live thing and talked stocks for about a year, and we made play after play after play after play, and I taught him a lot, and then he went out and got a book on point and figure.
Oh, very good.
And kind of pointed out what I was doing wrong, and then he surpassed me on being able to do the counts.
Nice. The student becomes the master, I suppose.
Yeah, and after he showed me what it was, I started having memories of like, okay, because there was like a long period where I didn't do point and figure because you had to do it by hand when I did it, so you had to keep constantly putting O's and X's.
Oh man!
Since stock charts did it automatically, I was like, this is the best tool ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So that's when I got back into it, but I couldn't remember. All my counts were always off because I wasn't, I couldn't remember clearly how I used to do the counts.
So yeah.
So he was able to do that, and he's been very accurate on many of the counts that we were doing during that year time. Sometimes, with the Tesla move up recently, where it went up, I thought it still had plenty of downward action coming, but apparently I was wrong.
Right. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, but PNF helps you do the count, but it doesn't tell you what direction. So if you think about his count, if it was a distribution, you're looking at it going to 0.
Yeah, that's not pleasant.
Right.
But yeah,
but I mean, like, it doesn't seem
mean.
possible, right?
Right.
Like, that doesn't seem like the likely outcome.
Right.
Like 14 down would be like
you've gone.
I mean, extremely
Sub-zero.
low. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the PNF's looking really good. And I think that you've got to take everything with a grain of salt in the market. One thing that PNF doesn't do is it can't do timing. So I'm going to take it off my screen now, but it can't do timing. And that's a big deal because a lot of people really want their timing to be right with options. And look, you can't always do that. I think there's other ways to estimate timing that can be semi-accurate, but I've never found like a surefire way to do timing. I mean, it's always been like a rule of thumb just to kind of multiply everything by 3. So if I think it's 3 weeks away, I maybe should just get something that's 9 weeks away because it's probably that far out. And AMC's been kind of chugging lately. It's not really and ape, and I think we're finally getting some volatility pumped back in and getting some faster moves. But you know, it would have been easy to say that we thought the spring was going to be fast and thinking that it could drop right here back in June, and that was a month ago. And if you had thought, well, maybe it's going to go down, and then it just didn't, you've been stuck for a month. So it's important just to remember that like things take time. And what Stockfather is talking about today, and I do really appreciate you jumping on Stockfather. He's got a video about it. If y'all want to check it out, you can just look him up on YouTube. And if you want to drop your link in the chat, you can, Stockfather. But he's got a video, and he's just talking about the nature of the LPS and things like that. And it takes time. It might be a couple weeks. It's not always a fast thing. The moves themselves, the big moves, could end up being very explosive. But as you all know, it might explode to the upside and then chop for a week or so. That's kind of the nature of the way things go, especially with AMC. And a lot of people forget that the original move back in January was almost a month long. I mean, it was a really long time period. I think it was 28 days or something. It felt like a flash in the pan, and I guess in the scheme of things it was. But in terms of timing, it was sort of slow. And then June is the same way. It looks really, really fast, but it still took more than, I don't remember exactly the number, but I feel like it was like 15 or 18 trading days. I mean, it was quite a bit of time. So just keep that in mind as you guys are trying to decide what you want to do for your investments. Should this go down for a spring, then yeah, you're going to add a lot of time to things, Should this be an LPS and just go right back up, maybe things happen a little bit faster, So.
Yeah, if you look at the phase D on a Wyckoff schematic thing that the Roman had done, that and he's by the way one of the most brilliant Wyckofians on the planet that drew up that sketch. You would see that typically on the second LPS following the first LPS that it does come up, into the range like it did, and then it comes back down almost to the middle of the previous LPS on the schematic, and then it kind of takes off. It's kind of like letting some people know, hey, we're changing things up. You might want to get in here, like other institutions, because this is one thing I'll add is the composite EMU or the composite operator. That what they're doing is they screw people both ways, right?
Yep.
So they screw retail when they're going down because retail is usually a bullish person, so they're constantly putting them in long traps, and then when they switch it, they're screwing the shorts by doing bear traps, and they're doing both. They're making money both ways. They're controlling the stock in such a way that they're letting other institutions slightly know, but at this point usually the other institutions are not they don't come in until they see the SOS.
Right. And the SOS is pretty high in this case.
Yeah, and then the other institutions are the ones that take it over and run it. Now, how they know how high to take it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that run it.
Yeah.
The composite operator switches at that point, and the one that has all the, which I believe is BlackRock, because they own. I mean, if you look at the math on it, right, they own like over 50% of the stock now.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, you think they're only going to would they only move it up $1 to get rid of it? I don't think so. The volume coming in implies either they're buying heavily right now or they're selling heavily, and I just don't see a small small
Yeah. Are you looking
uptick
at?
like that.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you looking at filings for BlackRock? Is that what you're doing? Because I'm not
I did,
sure
yeah.
where you're getting that BlackRock is the emu at this point. Because I know that we
We
thought that
also
in the
got, yeah,
past.
you have to understand that BlackRock also owns Vanguard.
Yes. So are you looking at
So if
both
you can,
Vanguard and BlackRock? Sorry, I thought you were going to say
yes,
more.
because
I
they
didn't mean
own Vanguard,
to
so
leave. Yeah.
they're the same company, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just has
Okay.
a different name.
So when we look at something like this, we're looking at probably a couple weeks. We're looking at coming back up to 6 at some point and having the breakout there. And I agree that that's a really critical level for a lot of reasons. So there is the triple top. We made a really large, what I would call a hook, but it's the same deal. Like at this point, you need to, whether you make a spring or an LPS, you need to come back up. I personally think once it jumps 525, I'm pretty bullish on it. It doesn't mean that it can't come back again, but I just really want it back up above here. And I think once that happens, I'll be really happy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't or make decisions right now. Now's a good time to perhaps make some purchases if you do think it's going to turn around. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting too because that breakout point, which, it's just a horizontal level up here at like 6 or 590, it's not only a horizontal level now, it's also a break above this uptrending creek. The reason that matters to me, and I talked about it to you last time we had a conversation, was that those guys have never been jumped. So when we come down, we started coming down from the very, very top. There's a series of parallels, and they never get crossed, ever. Once they jump it, they don't go back. And this is the first time you can see right here where it's jumped it, and it actually went back above one. It just never does. It's come to places where it's gotten like pretty close before. This is not the best chart for this. I don't know where my good one went. I'll have to remake it or find it because it's not on here. But basically, like, this is a decent one, I guess. It's got the parallels. Yeah, basically, it's never come back above these. So this is a really positive sign if it can get back above 620. I think it's like super strong signal that you could have a really significant change in character, move in direction. And you might think that, well, what about August? Because that was super high up. Surely that came above, but it actually did not. And if it did, it was like just barely. So again, I kind of changed my charts around a lot. So this one's not very clear either. Clear as mud. But I had talked to you about that when we first came up in May, and I was waiting to see if it was going to push above that, and it never did. It got kind of close to it. I don't have it on the chart right here. These are actually speed lines, but it was more like this guy right here. Should have been something like that. And we didn't actually make that push back up. So there's a lot of ways for people to get the same answers. Wyckoff is a really, really, really good tool for volume and liquidity analysis. It has a very strong background, 100 plus years or whatever, but the ideas that we talk about, they overlap. So when you're looking at something and you're seeing somebody talk about Elliott wave, and then you're seeing someone else talk about Wyckoff, try to see if you can find that middle ground, because it's usually there, and there's a reason that people practice those things, and that they've been around for a long time. They typically will confirm one another. So anyways.
Yeah, I've done my best to try to figure out Elliott wave. I can't do it.
Well, it's just different, It's just a different thing. So I'm going to stop the recording now. You can hang out for sure, but I think that was a really good summation, and we had good questions, and then it's about 30 minutes. So I'm going to stop it so I could repost it later.